For the first time since 1962, a prime minister of France lost a no-confidence vote. Michel Barnier has been defeated, and Macron's legitimacy is currently in shambles.
Yes.
All right. All this is coming off the back of a legislative election in France a couple months back that was basically broken down into a three-way tie between the left, the center, and the right.
Yeah.
The right is being dominated by the what is it called?
National Rally.
The National Rally. The center is obviously the Renaissance, the Macron's party, and the left is the New Popular Front. What was your initial reaction to this when you saw on the news that the prime minister got kicked out?
Kind of like, wow, but also I need to learn more about this.
Yeah.
Like I of course we covered the snap elections in the middle of the summer. But I was curious. Like I was curious what exactly is the fallout now? What happens next? Which to me seems like they basically can't govern for the next 6 months.
Yes.
Like they're on in a custodial capacity until they can have new elections in July.
And then in the law, you're not allowed to have elections between like one year of calling a snap election. So they can't even have a new election to try to rebalance the legislative chamber. But this guy, Michel Barnier, was supposed to be like a consensus pick from Macron, because at the end of the election, the left parties, the left coalition, ended up with the most amount of seats in the French parliament. They ended up winning, despite all people believing that the National Rally was going to be the ones taking the lead here.
Yes.
The left won. But Macron denied the left an opportunity to put up their own prime candidate for prime minister. And Macron put up his own candidate, Michel Barnier. Now, he was like this consensus pick. He was the chief negotiator for Brexit, for the European Union.
He's just a classic establishment politician in France.
He's a part of the La Républicains, which is like the Gaullist party, which is the party that's been the most in power since the end of World War II. So very much an establishment figure. And Macron's entire theory of the election was defeat extremism.
Yes.
So
yeah, and in the election, like the non national rally, the non far right parties, like they worked together to make sure they could defeat as many far right candidates as possible.
Yes.
By dropping out the candidates that they were putting up. So in the end, it was only a far right candidate versus one other more establishment candidate, rather than a far right candidate versus like three other candidates or four other candidates that could all siphon votes away from each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Barnier needed, what is it?
Barnier.
Yeah. Barnier needed to become prime minister, not just the pen of Macron. He needed consent from the legislative body.
Yes.
So how did he get those votes? He got the vote from the far right, the National Rally.
Yes, and then he was trying to to walk this incredibly thin tightrope where he keeps the support of the National Rally by kind of speaking to concerns that they speak to a lot, but also not giving them a ton of very much negotiating power at all in terms of how he's actually going to govern. And in this specific case, what he put up was a 2025 budget.
Yes.
And so this is the other question I had when I saw the news initially. I'm like, okay, what was the trigger here? Like, what made him get taken down?
And that's what it was, the 2025 fiscal year budget.
Yes. The issue is France is dealing with really high debt. The debt's like 115% of GDP or something like that. 110. It's bad. And again, when I saw that, I'm like, okay, well, a lot of countries have high debt, and I haven't really been hearing a ton about France's debt for a while. So why is this really coming up now? Why is this such a big issue? Basically, after COVID, the EU has its own rules to regulate how indebted countries get. And the limit they put on the deficit as a percent of GDP that you can have in your budget as a government is 3%.
Yes.
France's is at like 5.5%.
Now keep in mind, the deficit is the difference between what you take in and what you spend on any given year. It's different from the debt.
Yes, and it also has rules on the debt, which France is also completely blowing out of the water. The debt limit is 60% of GDP. So France is completely not complying with those rules. And Barnier proposes a budget that reduces spending by 60 billion euros in France, because that's going to be enough to comply kind of with the plan that they've submitted to the EU. It's not going to comply with the rules.
Yeah, there you go.
But they have to get on a trajectory.
It's almost like doing a payment plan when you're on a credit card.
Exactly.
Right?
And if they fail to do that, then they're going to face even more fines and have to pay the EU even more. Of course, to Le Pen and the National Rally, this isn't a problem at all, because exactly what they're trying to push for is
getting out of the EU. So they want the French people to get radicalized against the European Union. And they're like, oh, wait a second. If the European Union starts putting fines on us, that just then increases the people's desire to leave the European Union. And that makes us fulfill our entire goal here.
Yes.
Now, the New Popular Front, the left side of this, doesn't like his budget bill because he is raising the retirement age through this budget bill, which is something that is being passed without the approval of the legislative body. They're using the constitutional amendment like 49.3 or something.
This is the thing too. He couldn't get parliamentary approval, like support for his budget, so he had to push it through with a much more extreme mechanism that exists in France's constitution. So that's another reason that they're like, whoa, slow down, what the fuck, dude? Let's maybe like let's be able to have input into this.
Yes.
So you have the New Popular Front, which is somewhat economically populist as a more left-leaning political body, but then the National Rally is also economically populist.
Definitely, yes. Well, one of the things he had in his original budget was a tax hike on electricity. And the National Rally said, no, get rid of that. And so he did axe that out. Another thing he did to try to keep the far right in his coalition was cut medical benefits for undocumented immigrants. Okay, that's something else he tried to cut out. That wasn't enough. So he was also kind of shocked because he's like, well, I thought I gave the National Rally plenty.
Exactly.
He thought I gave, but the truth is that you can never give them enough.
Yes.
Because their goal is not simply to just do these things. The goal is to leave the EU.
Yes. And I would argue that right now for the National Rally, they are super invested in just not being seen to compromise.
Yes.
Like it helps them to make the government seem more dysfunctional.
Yes.
Because they are the non-establishment.
Yes.
The one other part of this that I think is really interesting, so like you said, it's not looking good for Macron right now.
Terrible.
This is the prime minister that he chose, and now his legitimacy is super under attack because this prime minister was deposed, and now they're going to have a really hard time governing. The reason this is so important for Marine Le Pen specifically right now, but also National Rally in general, is because Le Pen is facing a court case.
Yes.
Where the verdict or the sentencing, I think, maybe verdict and sentencing, is due early in 2025. Macron's term as president isn't up until 2027.
Yep.
So like she has to make it until 2027 to be a candidate, at which point French media totally sees Le Pen as the frontrunner to be the new president of France. The issue is that the prosecutor in Le Pen's case has recommended barring her from holding office if she's convicted. So she's running this risk, and she's playing this calculus out where she wants to put as much pressure as possible on Macron to resign. Because honestly, I mean, it's very echoes of Donald Trump in the US.
Of course.
If she wins election, she doesn't have to worry about the court case anymore.
Yes. And so Macron, he has to hold on.
Exactly.
He has to hold on.
Yeah.
Despite the disapproval, despite everything, because his approval rating is going through the garbage, the gutter right now.
Yep.
And he needs to hold on out until 2027. Otherwise, Le Pen pretty much walks right into it.
Totally. And to be clear, there's no mechanism for the French to oust their president.
No, there's no impeachment like that. The French Constitution has a very powerful president.
Yes.
Very powerful president.
Yeah. So the only way to get him out is to step down. And I hope he realized, like, I hope there's not some kind of politician's pride.
I know.
Right. That gets him to step down, and rather he sees that the right thing to do is to stay in this office as long as he has.
It's funny. It's like the opposite of the Biden syndrome.
Yeah.
Right? Biden syndrome was like, no, you need the prideful thing, fighting for your pride of staying there for too long is what will hurt the country. And now Macron is in a situation where he realizes, even though it would be beneficial for me to leave now and tip my hat and go away and, have some consultant lobbying job,
Yeah, beneficial for him, but would be pretty
terrible
devastating for the country.